that you were here, said Mr. Rajda. I told him definitely I would like to ask for darshan. This attempt at material adjustment, Prabhupada began, speaking slowly, just like we felt a little danger under the regime of Indira Gandhi. Now we have another feeling. This is material adjustment. Material adjustment may be temporarily beneficial, but that is not permanently beneficial. Mr. Rajda replied, unless unless there is adhyatmic adjustment, there cannot be lasting benefit. Mr. Rajda was obviously acquainted with the Sanskrit Vedic knowledge, and he was also aware of the value of going to see a saintly person. Prabhupada persisted, however, in making the point that people do not really understand spiritual life. He described that the material body is made of different elements, and yet the living being is different than these elements. Unless we understand this fact, he said, which is very nicely explained in the Bhagavad Gita, this material adjustment will never make us happy. Mr. Rajda followed Prabhupada's point, but asserted that a great change had taken place since the elections. The basic difference, he said, is that formerly there was no moral code observed by the rulers. He was entirely agreeable or wanted to be with Srila Prabhupada, yet they were speaking on different levels. Both asserted that spirituality was needed in government, but Mr. Rajda's political conclusion was that such spiritual reform was now present in his political party. Srila Prabhupada, however, continued to speak of people who talk of God, yet don't even know the identity of the soul. He didn't specify whether this criticism applied to the former or the present political party, although his remarks seem to include both. Whoever was not in transcendental knowledge, whoever tried to work in the material field without knowing the difference between spirit and matter, would come to the same inglorious end. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jaya Jaya Shri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Shri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Jaya Shri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Jaya Shri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. 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 Jaya Jaya Shri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda. 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 Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. 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 Reading from Shri Caitanya Caritamrta Madhya Lila, Volume 3, text 71 onwards. So today is on the Vaishnava calendar is very famous occasion called Gundicha Marjanam, cleansing of Gundicha temple, which is actually directly connected with Ratha Yatra, because before Lord Jagannath goes to basically Ratha Yatra means bringing the beloved Krishna who left Vrindavan to kill the demons, Kamsa and others, execute his mission, why he came to this material world. Then residents of Vrindavan come and bring him back to Vrindavan because they suffered for long in separation from him. So Gundicha temple is the place that is not different from Vrindavan in Jagannath Puri. When Lord Jagannath leaves Jagannath temple and devotees take him on the carts and bring him eventually to Gundicha temple, which is not different as I mentioned to Vrindavan. So this pastime is about how this before Ratha Yatra, how this Gundicha temple was cleaned by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And there is also a deeper meaning, or not deeper, as deep as cleansing Gundicha temple, that's very deep in itself, but also a meaning of cleansing the heart from all sorts of dirt, so that it becomes cool and beautiful and wonderful place for Krishna to fully manifest himself and remain there. So we'll start from 71 onwards until we reach 135 that we were going to do today. Just go through English because there's many verses, but it's nice to read Prabhupada's translations that is full of his devotion to Krishna. In this way, the Lord passed some days in great jubilation. Then the car festival of Lord Jagannath approached. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu first of all called for Kashi Mishra, then for the superintendent of the temple, then for Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. When these three people came before the Lord, he begged them for permission to wash the temple known as Gundicha. Upon hearing the Lord's request for permission to wash the Gundicha temple, the Pandicha, the superintendent of the temple, said, "My dear sir, we are all your servants. Whatever you desire is our duty to perform." The king gave a special order for me to do without delay whatever your lordship orders. My dear Lord, washing the temple is not service befitting to you. Nonetheless, if you wish to do so, it is to be accepted as one of your pastimes. To wash the temple, you need many water pots and brooms. Therefore, order me. I can immediately bring all these things to you. As soon as the superintendent understood the desire of the Lord, he immediately delivered 100 new water pots and 100 brooms for sweeping the temple. Just a couple of days ago, we enacted to some extent this pastime next door in the yoga barn. There wasn't 100 brooms, but was almost 100. It was nearly 100 brooms. Before the floor was laid, there was about 12, 14 devotees who cleaned the yoga barn next door. The next day, early in the morning, the Lord took his personal associates with him and with his own hand smeared sandalwood pulp on their bodies. You can see how Lord is personal with devotees. He was, with his own hands, he was serving devotees. He then gave each devotee a broom with his own hand, and taking all of them personally with him, the Lord went to Gundicha. In this way, the Lord and his associates went to cleanse the Gundicha temple. At first, they cleansed the temple with the brooms. The Lord cleansed everything inside the temple very nicely, including the ceiling. He then took up the sitting place, Simhasana, cleansed it, and again put it in its original place. Thus the Lord and his companions cleansed and swept all the temple's buildings, big and small, and finally cleansed the area between the temple and the Kirtan hall. Indeed, hundreds of devotees were engaged in cleansing all around the temple, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was personally carrying out the operation just to instruct others. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu washed and cleansed the temple in great jubilation, chanting the holy name of the Lord all the time. Similarly, all the devotees were also chanting at the same time, performing their respective duties. So the Jiva Goswami very much suggests that for this age, any other activities we perform should be accompanied by kirtan, unless it's not possible. Like if you're doing some intellectual kind of thing, if you start singing, it may not work. You may not be able to perform your service. But as much as possible, whatever we do should be accompanied with kirtan, and that makes that activity perfect for listening to the kirtan. The entire beautiful body of the Lord was covered with dust and dirt. In this way, it became transcendently beautiful. At times, when cleansing the temple, the Lord shed tears, and in some places, he even cleansed with those tears. So that's a bit different. When we become dirty, we usually don't look very beautiful. But for the Lord, everything that He does is beautiful, and even if He becomes dirty, it becomes very, very beautiful. After this, the place where the deity's food was kept, Bogamandir, was cleansed. Then the yard was cleansed, and then all the residential quarters, one after the other. After Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu collected all the straw, dust, and grains of sand in one place, he gathered it all in his cloth and threw it outside. Following the example of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all the devotees, in great jubilation, began to gather straws and dust with their own cloths and throw them outside the temple. The Lord then told devotees, I can tell how much you have labored and how well you have cleansed the temple simply by seeing all the straw and dust you have collected outside. Even though all the devotees collected dirt in one pile, the dirt collected by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was much greater. So the Lord himself, his pile was bigger than the rest of the devotees together. And he was a bit encouraging transcendental competition, saying, I will see how much you labored by the size of your pile. After the inside of the temple was cleansed, the Lord again allotted areas for the devotees to cleanse. The Lord then ordered everyone to cleanse the inside of the temple very perfectly by taking finer dust, straws, and grains of sand and throwing them outside. So first was like this major cleaning, but the next they got into this finer, collecting all the dust, etc., and finer pieces of straw. After Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and all the Vaishnavas cleansed the temple for the second time, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very happy to see the cleansing work. While the temple was being swept, about 100 men stood ready with filled water pots, and they simply awaited the Lord's order to throw the water from them. As soon as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu called for water, all the men immediately brought 100 water pots, which were completely filled, and delivered them before the Lord. In this way, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu first washed the main temple and then thoroughly washed the ceiling, the walls, the floor, the sitting place Simhasana, and everything else within the room. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself and his devotees began to throw water onto the ceiling. When this water fell, it washed the walls and floor. Then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began to wash the sitting place of Lord Jagannath with his own hands, and all the devotees began to bring water to the Lord. All the devotees within the temple began to wash. Each one had a broom in his hand, and in this way they cleansed the temple of the Lord. Some brought water to pour into the hands of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and some poured water on his lotus feet. This water that fell from the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was drunk by someone who hid himself. Someone else begged for that water, and another person was giving that water in charity. Because that's the water that washed the Lord's lotus feet. It's considered most purifying. It's not different from Charitamrta. It's not different from Ganges as well, because Ganges emanates from the lotus feet of the Lord, where he cracked a hole in the universe with his feet, from where the Ganges is coming. After the room was washed, the water was let out through an outlet, and it then flowed and filled the yard outside. The Lord mopped the rooms with his own clothes, and he polished the throne with them also. So you think that mopping or cleansing is some sort of low-class activity. It's quite opposite. The Lord himself does it with personally hands, and was working as enthusiastic, or actually more enthusiastic than everybody else, performing this simple but very special task. In this way, all the rooms were cleansed with 100 water pots. After the rooms had been cleansed, the minds of devotees were as clean as the rooms. So this is Shastic, it's not the devotees who say, just clean the temple and that cleanses your heart. They're not trying to trick you in doing the service. Is the case. Every piece of dust you clean in a temple, you're doing it very nicely, collecting all the dust and mopping the floor. Simultaneously, as you're doing that, as the temple is becoming cleaner, then your heart is also becoming cleaner. When the temple was cleansed, it was purified, cool, and pleasing. just as if the Lord's own pure mind had appeared. So Prabhupada emphasized so much a revolutionary cleanliness in the temple. So if the place is revolutionary clean, then that mode of goodness it becomes manifested, and because of the presence of the Lord, then it's just a one step of to transcendence. So actually, when it's very very clean, then the Lord's mind appears. Lord's own pure mind appears, and when the people visit, they can feel that atmosphere. So Prabhupada very much emphasized revolutionary cleanliness. Since hundreds of men were engaged in bringing water from the lake, there was no place to stand on the banks. Consequently, someone began to draw water from a well. Hundreds of devotees brought water in the pots, and hundreds took the empty pots away to fill them up again. With the exemption of Nityananda Prabhu, Advaita Acharya, Swarup Damodar, Brahmananda Bharati, and Paramananda Puri, everyone was engaged in filling the water pots and bringing them there. Many of the water pots were broken when people collided with one another, and hundreds of men had to bring new water pots to fill. Some people were filling the pots and others were washing the rooms, but everyone was engaged in chanting the holy name of Krishna and Hari. One person begged for a water pot by chanting the holy names, Krishna, Krishna, and another delivered the pot while chanting, Krishna, Krishna. Whenever anyone had to speak, he did so by uttering the holy name of Krishna. Consequently, the holy name of Krishna became an indication for everyone who wanted something. Krishna. As Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was vibrating the holy name of Krishna in ecstatic love, he himself was performing the work of hundreds of men. It appeared as though Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were cleansing and washing with 100 hands. He approached every devotee just to teach him how to work. When he saw someone doing nicely, the Lord praised him. But if he saw that someone was not working to his satisfaction, he immediately chastised that person, not bearing him any grudge. The Lord would say, "You have done well. Please teach this to others so that they may act in the same way." You see, the Lord as well he inspired, encouraged, and praised who to do well, but sometimes he also chastised some others who were holding back a little bit. So we should also be open, to receive a praise, but also receive a chastisement is necessary or correction. Because it's done for our benefit. And the way to receive chastisement, the mind usually reacts, or actually more specifically false ego reacts because of material conditioning. But at that time we can recite and conquer our mind by saying, I'm a servant of Lord Chaitanya, I'm a servant of Lord Chaitanya, I'm a servant of Lord Chaitanya and servant of his servants. It was exemplified by Advaita Acharya. So in that way, we can counteract our false ego and accept that correction and with the gratitude that this is helping me to improve my service. As soon as they heard Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu say this, everyone became ashamed. Thus the devotees began to work with great attention. They washed the Jaga Mohan area and then the place where food was kept. All other places were also washed. So this attention is very important. In this way, the meeting place was washed, the entire yard, the raised sitting places, the kitchen, and every other room. Thus, all places around the temple were thoroughly washed, within and without. After everything was thoroughly washed, a Vaishnava from Bengal, who was very intelligent and simple, came and poured water on the lotus feet of the Lord. The Gaudiya Vaishnava then took that water and drank it himself. Seeing that, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu felt a little unhappy and also outwardly angry. Although the Lord was certainly satisfied with him, he became angry externally in order to establish the etiquette of religious principles. So sometimes devotees may do that as well to teach us. They may not necessarily angry, but they may become angry to teach us something on a certain occasions, not like a generally, but sometimes that may be required to teach something. The Lord then called for Swarup Damodar and told him, "Just see the behavior of your Bengali Vaishnava. This person from Bengal has washed my feet within the temple of the personality of Godhead. Not only that, but he has drunk the water himself. I now do not know what my destination is because of this offense. Indeed, your Bengali Vaishnava has greatly implicated me." So we do not, if we touch, we shouldn't touch anything with our feet. In general, feet is considered dirty, except if you are Supreme Personality of Godhead or a pure devotee, then it's considered everything but touches is become pure. But if we are not on that level, which we, may not be, then we should not touch anything with the feet. And by accident, if you touch devotees with the feet, then there's usually devotees just touching. I cannot take back the karma, because it's described that the bad karma is passed to the person. If you touch somebody with feet, our bad karma and reactions goes on that person. So that's why Lord Chaitanya is saying, I don't know what will be my destination. Obviously, he's the Supreme Lord, but he's acting as a devotee to teach us. And also, devotees do not offer obeisances when the curtains are open as well, and do not touch the feet of spiritual master in front of the deities. It's considered that the Lord should be center of attention at that point. At this point, Swarup Damodar Goswami caught the Gaudiya Vaishnava by the neck and, giving him a little push, ejected him from the Gundicha temple and made him stay outside. After Swarup Damodar Goswami returned within the temple, he requested Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to excuse that innocent person. Sorry, not execute, excuse. After this incident, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very satisfied. He then asked all the devotees to sit down in two lines on both sides. The Lord then personally sat down in the middle and picked up all kinds of straw, grains of sand, and dirty things. While Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was picking up the straws and grains of sand, he said, "I shall gather everyone's collection, and I shall ask whoever has collected less than others to pay a fine of sweet cakes and sweet rice." So you see how the Lord is training and encouraging devotees to work hard. In this way, all the quarters of the Gundicha temple were completely cleansed and cleared. All quarters were cool and spotless, like one's cleansed and pacified mind. When the water from the different rooms was finally let out through holes, it appeared as if new rivers were rushing out to meet the waters of the ocean. So this is today's verse. Hey Mata, Puradvara, Age, Pata, Yata. Hey Mata Puradvara, Age, Pata, Yata. Sakala, Shodila, Taha, Ke, Varnibe, Kata. Sakala Shodila Taha, Ke, Varnibe, Kata. Oh. Oh, Krishna. No problem. So just go to translation. Outside the gateway of the temple, all the roads were also cleansed, and no one could tell exactly how this was done. So the miracle happened as well. As they were cleaning the temple, all the roads were also cleansed, without anyone's understanding what happened there. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. It's a very long purport, so we'll stop at some point. In commenting on the cleansing of the Gundicha temple, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as the world leader, was personally giving instructions on how one should receive Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, within one's cleansed and pacified heart. If one wants to see Krishna seated in his heart, he must first cleanse the heart as prescribed by Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu in his Shikshashtaka, Cheto Darpana Marginam. In this age, everyone's heart is especially unclean, as confirmed in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Iridiantos, Iridiantosto, Iridiantasto Yabadrani. To wash away all dirty things accumulated within the heart, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advised everyone to chant the Hare Krishna mantra. The first result will be that the heart is cleansed, Cheto Darpana Marginam. Similarly, Srimad Bhagavatam confirms the statement, Shinvanta Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridyantasto Yabhadrani Vidunoti Suhrit Satam. Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, super soul, in everyone's heart and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who relishes his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. If a devotee at all wants to cleanse his heart, he must chant and hear the glories of the Lord, Shri Krishna, Shrinvanta Swakata Krishna. This is a simple process. Krishna himself will help cleanse the heart because he is already seated there. Krishna wants to continue living within the heart. And the Lord wants to give directions, but one has to keep his heart as clean as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu kept the Gundicha temple. The devotee therefore has to cleanse his heart just as the Lord cleansed the Gundicha temple. In this way, one can be pacified and enriched in devotional service. If the heart is filled with straw, grains of sand, weeds, or dust, in other words, anyabhilasha, purna, one cannot enthrone the Supreme Personality of Godhead there. The heart must be cleansed of all material motives brought about through fruitive work, speculative knowledge, the mystic yoga system, and so many other forms of so-called meditation. The heart must be cleansed without ulterior motive. As Srila Rupa Goswami says, Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karmadi anavritam. In other words, there should not be any external motive. One should not attempt material upliftment, understanding the Supreme by speculative knowledge, fruitive activity, severe austerity, and penance, and so on. All these activities are against the natural growth of spontaneous love of Godhead. As soon as these are present within the heart should be understood to be unclean and therefore unfit to serve as Krishna's sitting place. We cannot perceive the Lord's presence in our hearts unless our hearts are cleansed. A material desire is explained as a desire to enjoy the material world to its fullest extent. In modern language, this is called economic development. An inordinate desire for economic development is considered to be like straws and grains of sand within the heart. If one is overly engaged in material activity, the heart will always remain disturbed, as stated by Narottam Das Thakur, Samsara Vishanale, Diva Nishi Hiya Jwale, Judaite Nakainu Upaya. In other words, endeavor for material opulence is against the principle of devotional service. Material enjoyment includes activities such as great sacrifices for auspicious activity, charity, austerity, elevation to the higher planetary systems, and even living happily within the material world. Modernized material benefits are like the dust of material contamination. When this dust is agitated by the whirlwind of fruitive activity, it overcomes the heart. Thus, the mirror of the heart is covered with dust. There are many desires to perform auspicious and inauspicious activities, but people do not know how life after life they are keeping their hearts unclean. One who cannot give up the desire for fruitive activity is understood to be covered by the dust of material contamination. Karmists generally think that the interaction of fruitive activities can be counteracted by another karma of fruitive activity. This is certainly a mistaken conception. If one is deluded by such conception, he is cheated by his own activity. Such activities have been compared to an elephant's bathing. An elephant may bathe very thoroughly, but as soon as it comes out of the river, it immediately takes some sand from the land and throws it all over its body. If one suffers due to his past fruitive activities, he cannot counteract his suffering by performing auspicious activities. The sufferings of human society cannot be counteracted by material plans. The only way these sufferings can be mitigated is by Krishna consciousness. When one takes to Krishna consciousness and engages himself in the devotional service of the Lord, beginning with chanting and hearing the glories of the Lord, the cleansing of the heart begins. When the heart is actually cleansed, one can clearly see the Lord sitting there without any disturbance. In Srimad Bhagavatam 9.4.68, the Lord confirms that He sits within the heart of the pure devotee. Sadhavo hridayam mahyam, sadhavanam hridayam tvaham. Here, it's a very long purport. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Chalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Caitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim yat kripatamaham vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. By the mercy of spiritual master, blind man can see the stars, lame man can cross the mountains, and dumb man can speak eloquently. I therefore offer my respectful obeisance and lotus to my spiritual master. Namah Vishnu Krishna Prishna Mitale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Namini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyati Vishta. So the translation again. Outside the gateway of the temple, all the roads were also cleansed, and no one could tell exactly how this was done. So we read today this wonderful pastime, how Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Supreme Personality himself, took a broom and he cleansed himself personally in the temple, showing the importance of cleanliness standard, and also showing the importance, as Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati explains, that is Prabhupada quotes Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, that this cleansing of the temple is also compared with the cleansing of the heart. And as we can see, before the Lord, they were awaiting and preparing for Lord Jagannath to arrive. After the Rath Cart festival, that devotees took Lord Jagannath on the procession, and eventually he comes to Gundicha temple, and there he is placed by the devotees. And the Gundicha temple is considered different from Vrindavan. So this is such a significant pastime. So for the Lord to manifest in the heart, and it requires that atmosphere of purity and the devotion that is the essence, service attitude, that is the essence of Vrindavan. So what devotees did, you can see there was like a few good stages that was done of the cleansing. First, they collected all the big pieces and bits, just like we did organized by Prabhupada Prana a few days ago when we cleansed, when we collected the dust in the yoga barn. There was one person with a big broom and just collecting all the big pieces. And then there was another person with a smaller broom gathering all the finer pieces of dust and straw and etc. and then there was another person who was collecting from the sides, because that's also gets left where where the wall starts. It's not so easy to get sometimes with a big broom. There was another person who's collecting all those small bits and pieces. So you can see that this cleansing was going finer and finer and finer, starting from the gross, things to more finer and more subtle uh, particles of dust and dirt. And finally, after all that has been cleansed, they also then used a water, brought a lot of water pots, and the whole place was cleansed with water. And after that, on top of that, Lord Caitanya, picked up his upper cloth and then was further cleansing everything. So it's like a many, many stages of determined cleaning. And there is described after all this cleaning took place, the temple room and the whole atmosphere became like a pure Lord's mind. It's described that the mind and the heart is one, because of course it may be different with the Lord, because Lord is kind of goes beyond the laws of material nature. But for a conditioned soul who's got a mind and the heart, they are considered the same place. So for the Lord's mind to manifest, that means Lord's mind and the heart becomes manifested in that pure transcendental atmosphere. So whenever there's this cleanliness inside and outside, there's the two types of cleanliness that Prabhupada emphasized and the scriptures emphasized, and Lord Chaitanya exemplified here as well with this cleansing. Is external cleanliness. It's so important to keep things externally clean. Of course, I'm also preaching to myself, because some person is very far away from the standard that is being explained. But I guess Krishna is giving me opportunity to realize this on deeper level by speaking on a subject matter. This kind of principle is called preaching to oneself. That you get opportunity to explain a certain principle that you need to apply yourself. So there is external cleanliness. It's so important for us to take fundamental, in fact, is to take bath every day. Devotee, the first thing when he gets up, he takes bath, and that does this external cleanliness. And we can see ourselves, there's an immediate change happens when we do cleanse. When we just open our eyes, mind sometimes, or even often, thinks, oh no, or wants to press on the buzzer, postpone, and have another 5 minutes, another 10 minutes, or doesn't even hear. I had many experiences. The alarm clock starts ringing, and the person who set it up is just completely oblivious. Is somewhere else. He has no kind of external awareness, external consciousness, so deeply engrossed in the modes, specifically in the mode of ignorance, that is not even aware that the alarm goes on, and the whole ashram gets disturbed. The person decided, okay, I have to get up earlier tomorrow, and then you can't. So as soon as you somehow or another squeeze yourself out of the sleeping bag and act enthusiastically, as we discussed actually with one devotee yesterday, that the mind follows the body for a new devotee. When devotee becomes very advanced, then the body follows the mind. But for a new devotee, the mind follows the body. So if you act enthusiastic, you can become enthusiastic. Even you can see non-devotees, they when I went to United States to work, this guy was so enthusiastic, and you can see it was kind of false in some ways, false enthusiasm. But when you get to the job, it's just like enthusiastically, expressing himself And then, it catches the fire. It catches the fire. That enthusiasm becomes infectious, the other people as well. And it's like nice to be around a person who is enthusiastic. It's also a good service for other devotees. Even if you don't feel like it, somebody comes and says, "Can you do this?" The conditioned mind is like, is like a dog. It becomes like what is the word when the dog is making that sound? Growl. Yeah, it starts growling. And it's actually very discouraging, to see when somebody is growling. Prabhu, can you kindly please do this? And the person growls. So we can be acting in a different way. You can say, yes, of course, it's my pleasure. Of course, I do this for you. And it saves so much trouble, because it's like it becomes disturbing to the person who is growling, and this person who is asked to do something, and the people who are around, they're thinking, like, what's going on here, But, if it says, yes, of course, I'm going to do this, my pleasure, consider it done. Such a nice atmosphere is created by this kind of very positive energy. Yes, let's do it. And then you finish it. What's next? You come back with enthusiasm. Yes, what's the next service? I want to please you. I want to help you. I want to serve you. Such a different atmosphere. And this is what is called transcendence, to that enthusiasm, kicking ourselves into action, jumping into action. And of course, not in a crazy way. First, of course, you have to finish until the person gives you a direction, and it says, "Can you do this?" And person is gone. Hey, wait, I haven't finished. So this is a bit a mode of passion as well. So you have to have enough patience to receive the full understanding of what you have to do. Otherwise, if you don't, you may think, okay, I'm just gonna do this now enthusiastically, but you may have to undo it and do it again, if you haven't listened properly. So you have to receive a proper understanding. Sambandha Gyan is so important, to receive a proper understanding before we turn it into abhideya, into action. You need to understand what needs to be done, what is the goal. I mean, not always. Sometimes you just have to do your little puzzle and just fill that puzzle as well. But generally, you need some understanding of what needs to be done, and then spring into the action. So we spring into the bathroom, and after we cleansed ourselves, the mind is completely different. So it's like a bridging that gap between initial reluctance and springing into action and tolerating to some extent, the activity of the mind. And the best is just as soon as your eyes open, let the holy name come out from your mouth as the first thing, Hare Krishna, and let the mantra, raise above that modes, offer obeisances to the spiritual master. That's the first thing to do as we woke up, and then we are become empowered to chant. And then just keep chanting, keep the vibration going while you're brushing the teeth in your mind. But of course, don't do it too loud, then don't wake everybody else up. So it's all practical. And then after the shower, you feel completely different. And then you're in a temple, and the hearing and chanting is the most fundamental thing, therefore, internal cleanliness. As the external cleanliness becomes manifest by brushing, by washing, taking shower, cleansing, the whole consciousness becomes uplifted and ready. That external cleanliness invokes the mode of goodness, and from the mode of goodness is just a one step to transcendence. So then we have 4 hours. 4 hours, what an opulence, from 4:30 to 8:30. As we discussed the other day, about 20% of our life, practically of awakened life, is those 4 hours is for hearing and chanting. What a great fortune is to hear and chant. And then we cleanse our heart. Whenever the mind wanders due to its flickering nature, we're bringing back under control over the self, and we are listening and we are calling the Lord, offering our prayers to spiritual master first, begging for his mercy, begging for his purification, that we're able to focus on the transcendental sound vibration. And then we are cleansing every time our mind focuses on transcendental vibration of Mahamantra is like a brushing all, and collecting all those straws, all those dust and dirt from the temple. Because imagine if you come one morning and uh, and the place is just absolute mess and dirty. It's absolutely disturbing. You would not, you would think, I don't want to be here. If the place is so dirty, I better go somewhere else. It's not a place to be. It's dirty, smelly, or whatever. So how we expect the Lord to reside. Of course, He is there as Paramatma, but He is kind of not manifesting Himself in His full opulence of Satchitananda, that we become fully aware, and we can see the devotees who has cleansed their hearts, like a pure devotee or advanced devotee. You can see there is like almost like effulgence emanating from that advanced devotee, and the presence of the Lord is felt so much because of that purity. Purity is the force. The Lord is manifesting to the heart, to the purified heart of devotee. So, like just like ourselves, we would not like to be in a place that is dirty, messy, etc. So, in the same way, the Lord would not manifest in a dirty place. So we want to create this wonderful, beautiful, clear place for the Lord to reside, and it is so beautifully described, often that creating like a sitting place, a throne for the Lord to reside in our heart. When the heart is purified, cleansed, it's called like a seat in the heart. So every time we're chanting and hearing, we're singing the bhajan, which translation we know, we're singing from the heart and begging for the Lord's mercy. Like in Guru Puja, it says, my only wish, Narottam Das Thakur is singing, my only wish is to have my heart purified by the words emanating from your lotus mouth. Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitete Koriya Akya Arno Koriho Mane Asha. This is my only wish, because why? As the heart becomes purified, then the Lord becomes manifest more and more. We want to establish that relationship with the Lord on a deeper and deeper level. But all those first gross things has to be removed: lust, anger, ignorance, greed, illusion, pride, all sorts of madness are there, the material conditioning in various forms manifested. And then in a more subtle, actually pride is considered more subtle form of lust, pride and the desire for worship, recognition, adoration, gain, all those more subtle manifestations of lust, and it has to also become purified. So you have to become very enthusiastic, because people work so hard in this material world to get what they want, especially if it's something very, very valuable and precious. People work so hard to get it. In the same way, we have to develop the highest appreciation by cultivating the study and hearing submissively from the scripture how this most wonderful goal of Krishna, the most valuable jewel, as Dhruva Maharaj says, there's nothing greater than Krishna, and so therefore it's worth any kind of effort and endeavor, whatever it takes. We have to be prepared to do it, because it's really, really worth it. It's absolutely anything that we go to Krishna consciousness, the struggle of being a new devotee and controlling the senses and rising early in the morning and getting corrected, thousands of times. And, sometimes you get shouted, and, whatever, is under some pressure, or pressure. Everything that you go through in spiritual life is worth it, of that struggle of the cleansing the heart, purifying, so that eventually it creates that throne for the most valuable jewel, Krishna himself, to reside in our heart. That is the greatest, most valuable gift. And this holy name is It has a cleansing effect, and at the same time, simultaneously, is not different from Krishna. So that's the most amazing thing, that Krishna or ourselves, we will not go to the dirty place, but the holy name, in this most merciful form, he is prepared to come, while our heart is still dirty, full of various types of desires for exploitation, and we want to take up Krishna's place, we want to be worshipped and glorified, etc. We are like a competitor, right? To Krishna, the mentality of competitor. I want to be the center. I want to be the supreme enjoyer. I want to be the proprietor. So many desires. We are, a conditioned soul is a competitor to Krishna, is competing for Krishna's position. Still, Krishna is prepared to come and cleanse our heart with the sincere chanting. How merciful is the holy name of the Lord that is prepared to purify this dirty heart full of desires, and it will become purified. And it's worth it. Every, despair and struggle and misery and joy, various types of emotions. We go sometimes in joy and sometimes some despair as we going to purification through the struggle, through surrender. Every moment of that is worth it, because it's bringing us closer to that ultimate goal of Krishna. And then, so we should be very, very enthusiastic, just like Lord Caitanya exemplified with his devotees. He was very, very enthusiastic to do this. Anything what he asked to do, any sacrifice, and etc. And of course, some balance is necessary, and sometimes we have to express ourselves that maybe this is too much, and we reveal our heart. But we try our best and be enthusiastic to cleanse our heart. So I have to stop here. Actually, we're out of time. Thank you so much for your attention and attendance. Grantharaj Shri Caitanya Charitamrta ki jai. Cleansing on Gudicha Temple ki jai. Nitai Gaura Premanande.